Good morning, students. Welcome to Zoology webinars for senior inter students of Model School. In the previous session of the Human Anatomy and Physiology, Manu sir explained about structure and functioning of few endocrine glands such as hypothalamus, pituitary, pineal, thyroid, parathyroid, and thymus glands. Today, let us learn about other endocrine glands in our body. Not only endocrine glands, but few organs such as kidneys, small intestine, they also secrete a same chemical such as hormones, which also plays important role in our body. Let us explore and study scientifically. I welcome Manush Kumar sir to take over the session. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, madam.
Please continue the session.
Thank you, madam. Students, a very good morning and welcome back to part 3 Human Endocrine System. In this part 3, we shall continue the other endocrine glands where we left in the part 2. Students, let us have a quick recap of part 2, what we have studied in the part 2. So far, we have discussed the hypothalamus, which is a master control center of total endocrine system and its hypothalamic hormones. We discussed about the pituitary gland, the three lobes, anterior lobe, middle lobe, and posterior lobe, and their respective hormones, pituitary hormones. Pineal gland and its secretion called melatonin. The largest endocrine gland of our body, thyroid gland, and its hormones. Parathyroid glands, which are associated with thyroid gland and its secretion parath hormone and the functioning of parath hormone. And in the part 2, we concluded with thymus gland and more of endocrine. It is a primary lymphoid organ and it secretes a hormone called as thymosin. This plays a very significant role in the immune system. Now, let us start the part 3. Before we enter into part 3, let us have a previous neat questions on this chemical coordination. This is the most abundant hormone produced by the anterior pituitary. So which of these four is the most abundant hormone that is secreted from the anterior pituitary, which is also called as adenohypophysis? Second one is, this hormone is not secreted by hypothalamus. So of these four, one hormone is not secreted by hypothalamus. You identify that. I told that two major hormones are released from the hypothalamus. Among the two, one group of hormones are called releasing hormones. R stands for releasing hormones. Another group of hormones released from the hypothalamus are inhibitory hormones. So releasing hormones, where R stands for releasing, inhibitory hormones is indicated with capital I. So here, of these four, one hormone is not secreted by the hypothalamus. Third one, action of parath hormone. This is also called as parathyroid hormone, abbreviated as PTH. We discussed it in the part 2. Okay, so action of parath hormone in the human body. So what is the correct answer among these four options? Try to give your answers. Now, students, let us start this part 3 with adrenal glands. The location of adrenal glands. A pair of adrenal glands are situated, each one on the anterior part of each kidney. So this is the kidney, bean-shaped organ, isn't it? This is the chief excretory organ. So on the tip of the, or on the anterior part of each kidney, we got a pair of adrenal glands. We got a pair of adrenal glands. So this picture gives you a clear idea. So here you can see the location, the presence of adrenal glands. So this is the bean-shaped reddish brown structures, kidneys, isn't it? So these kidneys on their tip or on their anterior part. So see here, a light yellowish colored structures. So these are nothing but adrenal glands. Adrenal glands are also called as suprarenal glands. Renal, which means kidney. Supra means above or tip. Okay. So as adrenal glands are located on the tip of each kidney, so these adrenal glands are also called as suprarenal glands. And they are the kidneys, they are retroperitoneal organs, isn't it? Now, coming to the right adrenal gland, if you see the right adrenal gland, it is more of pyramidal shape, or you can also say that this is like a cone shaped structure. Okay, so the right adrenal gland is more a cone like or more pyramidal shape, whereas the left adrenal gland is a crescent shape or half moon shaped, or you can also say that a semi lunar shape. Okay, so both the adrenal glands are not of same shape, they are differ in their shape. One is a cone shaped or pyramidal shape, another one is half moon shaped or crescent or semi lunar shaped structures. And each medulla each adrenal gland measures about 5 centimeters long, 3 centimeters wide, and 1 centimeters thickness. And the combined weight of two adrenal glands in adult human ranges between 7 to 10 grams. Of course, they are yellowish in color and they are surrounded by a fatty capsule. So each adrenal gland is now the adrenal gland is distinguished into two different regions. The adrenal gland is distinguished into two different regions. One is outer adrenal cortex, another one is inner adrenal medulla. The outer adrenal cortex, the origin of outer adrenal cortex is mesoderm. So from mesoderm, the outer adrenal cortex is formed or originated, whereas the inner or centrally located adrenal medulla is originated from ectoderm. So students, got it? So this is of mesodermal in origin, whereas this adrenal medulla is ectodermal in origin. So this is how the adrenal gland is distinguished into two different regions. Further, the outer adrenal cortex is also distinguished into different zones. They are from outer to inner. Outermost zona glomerulosa, middle zona fasciculata, and the innermost zone of adrenal cortex is zona reticularis. So this is how internally the adrenal gland is distinguished into two regions. Further, the outer adrenal cortex is divided into three different zones. This picture also shows the same, the presence or the location of adrenal glands on the anterior part of each kidney. And this is the transverse section of each adrenal gland, which shows a different regions, isn't it? So this part, so see here, this arrow indicates this part is called as, this is outer or peripherally located part. Okay, so this is adrenal cortex, and this is centrally located or the innermost of adrenal gland, isn't it, students? Now this is adrenal medulla. And further, if you see, these red color lines indicate the section of adrenal cortex, the section of adrenal cortex, which is further divided into three more zones, three different zones. So from outer to inner, so this is the outermost part of adrenal cortex. Okay, and this is the innermost part of adrenal cortex. So zona glomerulosa, zona fasciculata, and zona reticularis. And the secretions of these adrenal cortex are combinedly called as steroid hormones. They're called as steroid hormones. So this picture shows the same, the transverse section of adrenal gland. And this is the microscopic view of adrenal cortex. So this is the capsule, outermost capsule, zona glomerulosa, zona fasciculata, zona reticularis, and here the adrenal medulla, the innermost or centrally located adrenal medulla. Students, have a look at this picture. This also shows the different zones of adrenal cortex from outer to inner. Now let us find out the secretions or the different hormones secreted from the different zones of adrenal cortex. Let's start with zona glomerulosa. So zona glomerulosa synthesizes a group of hormones collectively called as mineralocorticoids. So the group of hormones synthesized and secreted from the zona glomerulosa of adrenal cortex are called mineralocorticoids, and the chief mineralocorticoid is aldosterone. So aldosterone is the chief mineralocorticoid. And from zona fasciculata, a group of hormones collectively called as glucocorticoids are synthesized. And one chief glucocorticoid is cortisol. So cortisol is one chief glucocorticoid, a hormone synthesized from zona fasciculata. Finally, zona reticularis. Zona reticularis synthesizes a group of hormones collectively called as androgens. These are called as androgens or sex hormones. Especially they are called as male sex hormones. So these are the different group of hormones that are synthesized from three different zones of adrenal cortex. So this picture also shows the same adrenal cortex from outer to inner. So this is the medulla. Okay, let us see the hormones from zona glomerulosa, mineralocorticoids, from zona fasciculata. This is the zona fasciculata, glucocorticoids. And this is the innermost zone of cortex. So it secretes androgens, and this is the innermost medulla region of adrenal gland, and it secretes a group of hormones called as catecholamines. A group of hormones called catecholamines. And find out the functioning of a mineralocorticoid. So one chief mineralocorticoid is aldosterone. Aldosterone helps in the maintenance of electrolytes. So minerals or electrolytes are nothing but salts. Especially this aldosterone helps in the retention of sodium ions, sodium and water retention. It stimulates the renal tubules, especially the distal convoluted tubule and the collecting tubule in the nephron. It stimulates the renal tubule, these two parts, to reabsorb more and more sodium and more water, such that the water balance is maintained, the electrolyte balance is maintained, the body fluid volume is maintained, as well as the osmotic pressure and blood pressure are also maintained. So aldosterone plays a very important role in maintenance of electrolyte balance, in maintenance of water balance. So aldosterone is supposed to be very important hormone. Students, by chance or by mistake, the removal of adrenal cortex, if it happens, if we remove the adrenal cortex from the body, so there is no secretion of aldosterone. If there is no secretion of aldosterone, it might kill a person. So this is as important as that. So the lack of aldosterone may lead to the death of the person, because there won't be the electrolyte balance or the water balance, and by this what happens, the osmotic pressure gets changed and the blood pressure either increases or decreases suddenly, and it will affect the functioning of vital organs such as heart and brain, and they may fail in proper functioning, and thus ultimately it may lead to the death of the person also. So aldosterone is an important mineralocorticoid. So the secretion of aldosterone is under the influence of angiotensin 2. Students, do you remember this hormone angiotensin 2? I think you might have studied about this in your excretory system, isn't it? So in the excretory system, we come across the juxtaglomerular cells, the JG cells, isn't it? So they release a hormone called as renin. Renin again converts angiotensinogen into angiotensin 1. Again, this angiotensin 1 is converted into angiotensin 2, isn't it? So now this angiotensin 2 actually stimulates the release of aldosterone from the zona glomerulosa, and it helps in the maintenance of this electrolyte balance and water balance. Coming to the glucocorticoids from zona fasciculata, and one chief glucocorticoid is cortisol, and this stimulates the process of gluconeogenesis. Students, do you remember this process, gluconeogenesis, which occurs in the liver? You have studied about this process while studying the functions of liver, isn't it? Gluconeogenesis, the production of glucose from non-carbohydrates, other than carbohydrates, like from amino acids, nothing but proteins, isn't it? From fatty acids. So the fatty acids, amino acids, proteins, these are non-carbohydrate sources, isn't it? So from this, glucose is produced. So the production of glucose takes place from proteins or amino acids, fatty acids, and that particular process is called as gluconeogenesis, which is stimulated by cortisol. And this cortisol also stimulates the process of lipolysis, that is nothing but the breakdown, lysis, breakdown of lipids, isn't it? And proteolysis, again lysis, breakdown of proteins. So as this cortisol stimulates both lipolysis and proteolysis, and thus facilitates the production of glucose from these, isn't it? And whenever a blood glucose level decrease in our body, so the cortisol is secreted and it stimulates the process of formation of glucose, which increases the blood sugar levels. This cortisol also regulates the cardiovascular system, that is the heart and the blood vessels functioning. It also stimulates the kidney functioning. And moreover, this cortisol generates anti-inflammatory reactions. So inflammation, the rise of skin, isn't it? Especially the inflammation, nothing but a kind of swelling, isn't it? So this suppresses that swelling reactions, that inflammation. Okay. And it also suppresses immune responses. So students, whenever there is a organ transplantation or tissue transplantation, so whenever from donor to recipient, any organ transplantation occurs or any tissue transplantation occurs, so generally what the recipient's body do, so it responds, okay, it treats that tissue or it treats that organ as a foreign particle, it rejects, the rejection may happen. So in order to suppress that rejection, okay, so this cortisol generally or naturally suppresses that immune responses such that the recipient body accepts that transplanted tissue or transplanted body organ. Okay. And finally, this cortisol also stimulates the production of red blood cells. The production of red blood cells is called as erythropoiesis. So cortisol stimulates the erythropoiesis, in which there is a production of red blood cells. And students, for your kind information, this cortisol is commonly called as stress combat hormone, because this cortisol is generally released during stressful conditions. So whenever we are in stressful conditions, whenever there is a decrease in the blood glucose levels, so generally what happens, that will definitely affect the functioning of brain. So if brain do not get the enough supply of glucose, immediately it improperly functions. Okay. So at the time what happens, this cortisol is released and it makes sure that the enough glucose levels are maintained in the blood and enough glucose levels are supplied to the brain such that brain is properly functioning. And moreover, certain substances are also released which might help in the repair of tissues. So overall, the effect of cortisol is protecting our health and also our well-being. Hence, this cortisol is also called as stress combat hormone or life-saving hormones. Finally, androgens are secreted from zona reticularis, and the group of hormones are called as androgens. These are also called as sex hormones, and these are responsible for the appearance of secondary sexual characters both in boys and girls. Students, don't get confused that androgens means male sex hormones and they are only function in males or in boys. It is not like that. The androgens are secreted in both boys and girls, and especially in girls, they do the function of a growth of pubic hair and underarm hair during puberty, and it also helps in the deepening of voice. So these are all the secondary sexual characters that appear during adolescent period or during puberty period. So these are the hormones that are secreted from the three different zones of adrenal cortex. So aldosterone. So there is a system called as renin, angiotensin, aldosterone system. So I explained that renin is the hormone secreted from JG cells, which in turn stimulates angiotensinogen and converts into angiotensin 1. And in this, again, angiotensin 1 is converted into angiotensin 2, and which stimulates the adrenal cortex to secrete this aldosterone. aldosterone. So it maintains sodium levels and water levels. The reabsorption of sodium and the reabsorption of water takes place from the renal tubule, especially from the distal convoluted tubule and as well as collecting tubule. And not only that, it also plays an important role in the secretion. In the secretion of what? In the secretion of potassium ions and phosphate ions. So the potassium ions, if at all they are excess in the blood, so their secretion into the renal tubule takes place by the influence of this aldosterone, and it makes sure that a proper blood pressure is maintained, proper blood volume is also maintained. Coming to the innermost part of adrenal gland, that is medulla, and the group of hormones, especially two major hormones are synthesized from this medulla. They are called as catecholamines. There are two catecholamines. One is epinephrine. This epinephrine is also called as adrenaline hormone. Students, do you remember this adrenaline, which you have studied in your 10th class? Isn't it a fight or flight hormone? Isn't it? So epinephrine is also called as adrenaline. Another catecholamine is norepinephrine. This is also called as noradrenaline. So epinephrine, norepinephrine, or adrenaline and noradrenaline are the two major catecholamines synthesized from the medulla. So what is the functioning of these epinephrine and norepinephrine? Students, you have given an example in your 10th class. So whenever you are in afraid situations, whenever you are in anxiety or excited, isn't it? For example, you are walking along a road, suddenly you have come across a dog. If a dog is after you, it is running after you. So do you observe any change that occurs in your body when you are really afraid of the dog? So what are all the changes that occur in your body? Nobody wants to fight with a dog, isn't it? Nobody wants to fight with a dog. So generally, what shall we do? So we run from that particular place in order to protect ourselves from the dog's bite, isn't it? So we start running from that particular place when a dog is after you. So at that time, we are very much frightened. So generally, these adrenaline hormone is released, and its amount of release is also increased during the frightening situations. So whenever we are afraid of something, isn't it? So the concentrations of adrenaline is increased, okay? And this adrenaline will bring some changes in our body. So have you ever observed those changes in that frightened situations? Yeah. One major change is your rate of heartbeat increases. And not only your rate of heartbeat, even your respiration rate also goes very faster, isn't it? Your skin becomes highly sensitized, and the erection of hair on the skin, which we generally call it as goosebumps, isn't it? Goosebumps appear on the skin, the erection of hair, involuntary erection of hair, okay? And lot of sweating, isn't it? Lot of sweating when we are afraid of something, or when we are seeing some horror pictures, isn't it? In the TV or in some movies, okay? So suddenly we get afraid of something, and suddenly what happens? Our rate of heartbeat goes faster, it increases, lot of sweating, okay? Goosebumps appear. So all these changes appear, and not only these changes, dilation of pupil, dilation of bronchioles, and very rarely you also see the emptying of bladder, especially urinary bladder, or sometimes the large intestine, rectum. Emptying of rectum, emptying of the urinary bladder also takes place during that frightening situations. So generally, students, remember this: this adrenaline hormone is released during any kind of stress, any kind of stress, in the sense that either it may be a physical stress or psychological or emotional stress. So during any kind of stress or during emergency situations, so generally the adrenaline or epinephrine hormone is released, and which will bring the changes, the necessary changes. And students, I think you might have seen, especially in village areas, in rural areas, a very common familiar experience is that bullfighting or cockfighting, isn't it? Two bulls fight with one another, or two cocks fight with one another. So even at that time also, the epinephrine or adrenaline hormone is released in their body, such that this epinephrine, the release of adrenaline, prepares our body either to face a situation, to a critical situation, or a frightening situation, or an emergency situation. So it prepares our body to face the situation or to escape from the situation. So that is nothing but flighting. Flighting means escaping, moving away from, running away from that situation, or either prepares us to face the situation, to fight with the situation. Hence, the epinephrine and norepinephrine, especially the epinephrine or adrenaline, is also called as fight and flight hormone, the hormone of flight and fight hormone. As this hormone is released during emergency situations, so these can also be called as emergency hormones. So adrenaline is also called as emergency hormone. Epinephrine is also called as flight and fight hormone. And not only that, even this adrenaline makes sure that there is a production of glucose in the blood, converting glycogen into glucose. So glycogen undergoes a process called as breaking down and is converted into glucose. So enough glucose is present in our body for the supply of cells, especially for the skeletal muscles, because if there is an interruption to the supply of glucose, our cells cannot work and they cannot produce enough energy. Okay, so during the emergency situations, actually we require more energy, and for this there must be a more supply of glucose for the cells. So this epinephrine makes sure that more and more glucose is produced at that time and prepares our body either to face the situation or to run away from the situation. So this is all about epinephrine. So what are all the changes that occur at the time of the release of epinephrine? Okay, so after a certain time, so whenever you reach a safer spot, isn't it, so again your body comes to normal state, the rate of heartbeat comes to normal, the rate of respiration comes to normal, no sweating, isn't it, and constriction of pupil takes place, goosebumps disappear. Okay, so all these changes takes place in a reverse manner, isn't it, our body comes to a normal state. So this is under the influence of norepinephrine. Students, see, so what are all the changes that occur at the time of the release of epinephrine are reversed by the release of norepinephrine. So on a whole, you can say that the functioning of epinephrine and norepinephrine are in opposite way, or they are antagonistic to each other. They are antagonistic because their functioning is in opposite way. So this is the functioning of these two hormones, epinephrine and norepinephrine. So this picture gives a clear view about the functioning and the release of different hormones from different parts of the adrenal gland. So zona glomerulosa, zona fasciculata, zona reticularis, medulla. So these are all the different hormones produced by the adrenal gland. Some previous NEET questions from this part. So which of the following would help in prevention of diuresis? So what is meant by diuresis? You will be coming across this diuresis again in your excretory system. So what is meant by diuresis? More loss of water. So more and more water is lost in the form of urine by the kidneys, isn't it? So that phenomenon, that condition is called as diuresis. And among these, one will prevent the diuresis. Okay, so you choose the correct answer. Coming to the next gland, pancreas. Students, you have studied about this pancreas in the digestive system as a digestive gland, isn't it? So pancreas is a merocrine type in the sense that nothing is lost during the secretion of the hormone by the gland. Okay, so such a nature is called as merocrine nature. And as a digestive gland, you have studied about the release of pancreatic juice, which contains different enzymes, such as trypsinogen, chymotrypsinogen, carboxypeptidase, isn't it? Pancreatic lipase, pancreatic amylase, nucleases such as DNAase, RNAase. So all these are nothing but the digestive enzymes which take part in the process of digestion. So this is what you have studied in the digestive system. But here, as an endocrine part, you'll be studying this pancreas. So this is the pancreatic gland that is present posterior to the stomach, in the abdominal cavity, and this is the first part of small intestine, that is a U-shaped duodenum. So this is the U-shaped duodenum. So exactly what is the location of pancreatic gland? It is situated in the space of this U-shaped loop of duodenum. So this is a pancreas. Pancreas is a mixocrine gland. This is not completely endocrine gland, or this is not completely exocrine gland. It is a mixed gland because Some part of pancreas acts as exocrine and some part of pancreas acts as endocrine. Hence, the pancreas is described as mixocrine gland. And this is, of course, as a digestive gland, you know that this is the second largest gland. As a digestive gland, this is the second largest gland. And it is situated between the limbs of U-shaped duodenum, posterior to the stomach. If you see the measurement, it is around 12 to 15 centimeters long, especially in adults. Okay, and it is a lobulated gland. It is a mixocrine gland because some part of it acts as exocrine and the remaining part acts as endocrine. Now this picture gives a clear idea. So which part of pancreas acts as exocrine and endocrine? Let us see. So this is nothing but the pancreatic acinus, acini. So these are the acinar cells, acini, that is plural, acinus singular. So this is the peripheral, the outer or the peripheral region of pancreas. So here, see in this picture, you can clearly see. So this is the cross section of pancreas. This is the cross section of pancreas where you can see the two different regions. This is the peripheral region. So in the peripheral region, you see the pancreatic acini. So these are the pancreatic acinar cells. So this part acts as exocrine because this is provided with the duct. So see here, this is the duct, a small tube or canal which carries the pancreatic juice. So this part of pancreas is called as exocrine part, and these pancreas acinus, these pancreatic acinus produces pancreatic juice which contains different digestive enzymes that take part in the process of digestion, especially in the process of digestion of proteins and lipids. So the pancreatic juice which contains enzymes helps a lot, isn't it? This is what you have studied in the digestive system in the physiology of digestion. Now coming to the central region of pancreas. So this is the central region. Do you remember, students, in 1868, Paul Langerhans in your 10th class, while working on the structure of pancreas, he noted patches of cells that are quite different from the other normal tissue cells. So these are the normal tissue cells, and these are the cells which are different in their appearance. So this is what observed by the Paul Langerhans while working on the structure of pancreas, and he named these cells, these patches of cells, unique cells, as islets of Langerhans. Islets stands for islands because as they are very different in their appearance from the other surrounding normal tissue cells, so he called them as islets of Langerhans, as Paul Langerhans discovered or noted for the first time. So these cells are called as islets of Langerhans. So this part of pancreas acts as endocrine part because these are supplied with rich blood vessels and they have got a rich blood supply, and they do not possess any ducts to carry the secretions of these cells. So these islets of Langerhans are very special kind of cells. They secrete some hormones, and their hormones are released into this blood circulation, and they do not have ducts. Hence this particular part is called as endocrine part, and the percentage of this endocrine part is just 1 to 2%. Yet it contains 1 to 2 millions of islets of Langerhans. Among these islets of Langerhans, there are different cells. Students, if you see, there are different colors of cells seen here in the endocrine part, islets of Langerhans. Among them, there are some alpha cells, beta cells, delta cells. So these are, see here, these are alpha cells of islets of Langerhans, and these are beta cells. And if you see the alpha cells, they secrete one important hormone called as glucagon, whereas the beta cells of these islets of Langerhans secrete another important hormone called as insulin. And only in the year 1912, it is known that the islets of Langerhans, especially the beta cells, release a hormone called as insulin. So this part is endocrine part and this part is exocrine part. Hence, the pancreas is called as a mixocrine gland or mixed gland. Now, students, see here, this is a very clear picture which shows the outermost, the peripheral exocrine part, and this part as an endocrine part, we are studying about these cells. So these are the cells which are quite different from the other cells. Hence, they are called as islets of Langerhans. Among these, there are certain alpha cells and there are beta cells. So these are the two important cells that secrete two important hormones. Two important hormones. So what are those? Let us see. So this is the diastole exocrine part of acinus, which secretes the pancreatic juice. and the other part of pancreas is endocrine part, which constitutes islets of Langerhans. And this exocrine part secretes pancreatic juice. And coming to this endocrine part, islets of Langerhans, two major cells or important cells, alpha cells, produce a hormone called glucagon. Beta cells produce another important hormone called insulin. Let us see the functioning of a glucagon and insulin. Now, glucagon is commonly called as hyperglycemic hormone. Hyper means high, above. Glycemic in the sense that glucose. So this glucagon is responsible in increasing what? Blood glucose levels. So as this glucagon is responsible in increasing the blood glucose levels, so this glucagon is called as hyperglycemic hormone. So whenever there is a decrease or whenever there is a fall in the levels of glucose in the blood, so that stimulates the alpha cells to secrete glucagon. So immediately what does this glucagon do? Is this will convert the glycogen into glucose. So this glucagon acts on liver cells or hepatocytes and stimulates glycogen into glucose, and that particular process is called as glycogenolysis. Again, see students, lysis means breaking down glycogen. So glycogen is the reserved stored food of animals. Even in human beings, the food is stored in the form of glycogen in the liver, isn't it? So now this glycogen is converted into glucose, and that conversion is called as glycogenolysis, which is brought by this glucagon. And not only that, this glucagon also stimulates the process of gluconeogenesis. We have just discussed about this gluconeogenesis, production of glucose from non-carbohydrates. So by both these processes, one is glycogenolysis, another one is gluconeogenesis. So by these two processes, what happens? The blood sugars or blood glucose levels are increased, and more, the glucagon also decreases the uptake and the utilization of glucose by the cells. This glucagon decreases the uptake and utilization of glucose by the cells, hence called hyperglycemic hormone. Coming to insulin, which is secreted from the beta cells, this is commonly called as hypo. Hypo means below. So this insulin hormone is responsible in decreasing, especially in decreasing the glucose levels, blood glucose levels. Hence, this is called as hypoglycemic hormone. So whenever the blood glucose levels increase, so the insulin hormone is secreted by the beta cells, and it acts on liver cells, adipocytes, and it also acts on skeletal muscle cells and increases the uptake and utilization of glucose. Students, see, what does this insulin do? This increases the uptake and utilization of glucose, isn't it, from the blood, such that what happens? The glucose levels are decreased, and more, this insulin also converts glucose into glycogen. That is called glycogenesis. Genesis means production, synthesis. So glycogen is produced from the glucose under the influence of insulin. So by this, what happens? The glucose levels are maintained. The glucose levels are maintained and decreased. Hence, this is called as hypoglycemic hormone. So students, see here, the functioning of glucagon and insulin again are in opposite way. So we can say that the glucagon and insulin are antagonistic to each other. So one increases blood glucose levels, the insulin decreases the blood glucose levels. Very important point here. A persistent means for a longer periods. If at all a person is suffering from hyperglycemia, because hyperglycemia means increased blood glucose levels for a longer period, persistence. Okay, so that leads to a disorder called as diabetes mellitus, which we commonly call as sugar disease. So sugar disease is caused due to the lack of or due to the under secretion of insulin. So this is one type of diabetes called diabetes mellitus, and we'll be discussing about this diabetes mellitus in the hormonal disorders in detail. So this picture, this slide gives again an idea. So glycogen is converted into glucose by the influence of glucagon hormone, and glucose is converted into glycogen by the influence of insulin hormone. So these are antagonistic to each other. And some previous NEET questions from this. This is not a function of insulin. So among these four, which one is the not function of insulin? See, observe these options carefully and try to answer the correct one and select the correct statement from these four. Okay. So of these four, one statement is correct. You try to identify the correct statement. This is for your practice. These are the previous NEET questions asked from this part. Another question, name a peptide hormone which acts mainly on hepatocytes, adipocytes, and enhances cellular glucose uptake and utilization. Just we discussed this, isn't it, students? Yeah. Now coming to testes, which are seen only in males. Hence, testis is also called as male gonadal glands. And the location of testis, they are present outside the abdomen, isn't it? So in a pouch called scrotum or scrotal sac. So this is the scrotal sac or scrotum pouch, okay, in which the testes are situated or lodged outside the abdomen, ovoid shaped pinkish colored structures. So these testes are nothing but gonads, and their primary function, the primary function of each testis is to produce sperms, male sex cells, isn't it? To produce sperms, or that is nothing but male sex cells is the primary function of testis, but it also acts as an endocrine gland. Hence, it is called as male gonadal glands, as they are only seen in males. So they are called as male gonadal glands. So this is the testis, and this is the scrotal sac, and this is the longitudinal section of each testis. So inside each testis, there are seminiferous tubules. So these are the seminiferous tubules. Let us find the cells which are responsible for the secretion of hormone. And students, for your information, testes are cytosinic organ. Cytosinic organ in the sense that they are mainly meant in producing cells. Here, what are the cells produced by the testes? Yes, sperms, male sex cells are produced. Hence, the testis is called as cytosinic organ. And the cells here, very important, are Leydig cells. So Leydig cells, they are present in the interseminiferous tubules or in the spaces between the interseminiferous tubules, and they are responsible in producing hormones collectively called as androgens. These are also called as anabolic steroids. Androgens or anabolic steroids, and very chief or very important androgen is testosterone, which is commonly called as a male sex hormone. So what is the male sex hormone? Testosterone is the male sex hormone, and which is responsible for the appearance of secondary sexual characters in boys during puberty. And this testosterone, along with a follicle stimulating hormone, responsible and for the initiation of spermatogenesis, that is production of sperms in the boys during puberty. Now this picture shows the interseminiferous tubules. So this is one seminiferous tubule, this is one seminiferous tubule, and this is another seminiferous tubule, and these are the spaces between seminiferous tubules. Hence these are called as interseminiferous tubules. Interseminiferous tubules. So see here, group of cells seen here. Here also some group of cells are seen here. These cells are called as Leydig cells or interstitial cells of Leydig. Interstitial cells of Leydig or Leydig cells. So these Leydig cells produce hormones called androgens. And one important androgen is testosterone, which is commonly called as a male sex hormone. So what is the function of male sex hormone? Testosterone. It is responsible for the development, maturation, and functioning of accessory sex organs, epididymis, vas deferens, seminal vesicles, prostate gland, urethra. So all these are the accessory male sex organs, isn't it? They are associated with the male reproductive system. So for the development, maturation, functioning, so testosterone along with androgens are very, very crucial. Okay. And testosterone is also required for the development of secondary characters in boys during puberty. And it stimulates spermatogenesis, production of sperms. Okay. And it also affects the central nervous system and controls the sexual behavior in boys. Okay. Like we call them as a libido or sexual urge, sexual desire. So this is nothing but a kind of sexual behavior generally that we have in boys during puberty. Okay. Attracting or getting attracted to the opposite sex. Okay. So all this is controlled by the central nervous system, affected by the androgens, especially testosterone. And coming to the ovaries, which are the primary sex organs in females. So their primary function is to produce ovum, ova. Okay. So for each menstrual cycle, they produce one ovum. So they are also cytosinic organs. And their secondary function is producing hormones. Hence, ovaries are also called as female gonadal glands. So here in this picture, you see This is the female reproductive system. Okay, so these are a pair of ovoid shaped structure. These are a pair of ovaries. So these are the ovaries and these are the fallopian tubules, and these are uterus. This is uterus and cervix and vagina. Okay, now here these are the ovaries. These are the ovaries produce hormones called ovarian hormones. Two important ovarian hormones are estrogen and progesterone. And their location, they are present in the abdominal cavity. They are cytogenic organs. They also produce female sex cells, egg cells, ovum, singular, ova, plural. And they produce hormones called female sex hormones. And the chief female sex hormones are estrogen and progesterone. Students, for your kind information, see here, the follicle stimulating hormone, that is FSH, and luteinizing hormone LH, these are released by the anterior pituitary lobe, isn't it? Adenohypophysis. So these two hormones are commonly called as gonadotropins. Why? Because both FSH and LH acts on testis in males and ovaries in females. So as they are stimulating the gonads, so they are called as gonadotropins. So both FSH and LH are called as gonadotropins because they are acting on, they are influencing the gonads, both male gonads and female gonads. So this is a cross section of ovary, each ovary. So if you see inside the ovary, we got two kinds of tissue cells, stromal tissues and the follicular tissues, isn't it? So these are the follicles, growing follicles, especially a primordial follicle becomes primary follicle, becomes secondary follicle, becomes mature Graafian follicle. So you'll be studying all these in the female reproductive system. I think you have studied, isn't it? So once the follicle becomes Graafian follicle, fully mature, what happens? The rupture of follicle takes place and the release of egg takes place. So that is called as the release of egg. That is called as ovulation. Ovulation. Okay. So these are the growing follicles. Especially the growing follicles release a hormone called estrogen. Growing follicles release a hormone called estrogen. So once the release of egg takes place, that is ovulation is completed. Now this empty follicle, this empty Graafian follicle becomes a yellowish body. This empty Graafian follicle becomes an yellowish body. Now this yellowish body is called as corpus luteum. Students, see here, this yellowish body, which is called as corpus luteum, acts as a temporary endocrine gland. This is not a permanent endocrine gland. This is not a permanent structure, because after, in case of non-fertilization, in case of infertilization, okay, in case of non-pregnancy, what happens? This corpus luteum becomes corpus albicans and it gets disintegrated. It gets disintegrated. So this corpus luteum, which is an yellowish body, acts as temporary endocrine gland and produces hormones called progesterone. Produces hormone called progesterone. So growing follicles produce estrogen. This yellowish temporary body produces progesterone. So this, after few days, this becomes, this disintegrates into corpus albicans. Now let us see, the growing follicles produces estrogen, corpus luteum produces progesterone, and the functioning of estrogen, which is a female sex hormone, is responsible for the development and functioning of female sex organs. It is also responsible for the secondary sexual characters in girls during puberty. It also controls a female sexual behavior. Coming to progesterone, it prepares the uterus for implantation. If at all a fertilization takes place, isn't it? The zygote formation takes place, isn't it? Embryo, and that is implanted to the walls of the uterus. So progesterone helps a lot in the implantation process. It also inhibits the uterus contractions and maintains the pregnancy. The progesterone also stimulates the formation of alveoli. Alveoli are nothing but small sac-like structures in mammary glands, and these alveoli are meant to store milk. Okay, and the progesterone is also responsible for the subsequent release of milk from the mammary glands soon after the delivery or soon after the childbirth. The mother breastfeeds the child, isn't it? So the production of milk is also controlled by the hormone progesterone. Now let us see the secondary sexual characters in both boys and girls. Students, go through this table. So these are the secondary sexual characters that are seen in boys and girls by the influence of these hormones, okay, during puberty. And some previous NEET questions from this part. So a chemical signal that has both endocrine and neural roles is, so which of these is a chemical signal that has both endocrine and as well as neural role? Next one, which of the following is a temporary endocrine gland of human body? Just now we have discussed it. So of these four, which one acts as a temporary endocrine gland? Identify the correct answer. These are some other questions. Which of the following hormone levels will cause a release of ovum from the Graafian follicles? So of these, one is responsible for the release of ovum from the Graafian follicles. Another one, this is not an endocrine gland. So among these four glands, which one is not an endocrine gland? Not an endocrine gland. Students, this picture shows both ovaries in females. These are the ovaries in females, and whereas these are the testes inside the testicular sacs or scrotal sacs in the females, produces these respective hormones. So this is a table in your 10th class, endocrine glands of different endocrine glands, their hormones and their response of body to these hormones. So go through this table. Students, so far we have discussed different endocrine glands. Now let us discuss the non-endocrine glands of our body. So what are those non-endocrine glands? They are nothing but kidney, heart, gastrointestinal tract, and liver. So these organs are actually not endocrine glands or not endocrine organs, but still somehow they secrete some endocrinous natured hormones. Okay, so they are called as non-endocrine organs or non-endocrine tissues, and they also release certain endocrinous natured hormones. Let us see their functioning. So in addition to these endocrine glands, okay, some tissues which are not fundamentally endocrinous in nature also secrete certain hormones that perform a very important functions in our body. So let us see the heart, especially whenever there is an increased blood flow, there is an increased blood flow to the right atrium. So what happens? The walls of the atrium are stretched. When the walls of the right atrium are stretched due to increased blood flow, that is nothing but whenever there is an increase in blood pressure. So what happens? There are special kind of cells in the atrium. They are called as atrial myocytes. What are those cells, students? Atrial myocytes. So these atrial myocytes are the special endocrinous natured cells that release a hormone, a peptide hormone called as atrial natriuretic peptide hormone, or this can be also called as atrial natriuretic factor, ANP. It is abbreviated as ANP or factor, ANF. So this is released in response to increased blood volume or increased blood pressure or increased blood flow to the right atrium. And these are released, this hormone is released by the atrial myocyte that is present in the right atrium whenever the atrial walls are stretched. And what does this ANP do? This will decrease the blood pressure by vasodilation. Vasodilation, what does this mean? Vasodilation, dilation of the blood vessels by the contraction of the smooth muscles that are present in the walls of the blood vessels. So the blood vessels are dilated, they are increased in their lumen volume. So by this what happens? The blood pressure is decreased. The blood pressure is decreased. So this is the function of natriuretic peptide hormone that is secreted by the walls of the heart, especially atrial myocytes. Okay, students, ANP. So this decreases by vasodilating, by the dilation of the blood vessels, the blood pressure is decreased. And this ANP also acts on the kidneys to reduce the reabsorption of sodium and as well as water. So by this what happens? If blood pressure decreases, by the reabsorption of sodium and water, the blood pressure is increased. It comes to normal. If blood pressure is increased, the reabsorption of sodium and water is not done. So this is how ANP regulates the blood pressure of our blood by reabsorption of sodium ions and water. If blood pressure has to be decreased, so they are not at all reabsorbed and they are excreted in the urine. So this is how the ANP, natriuretic peptide hormone, is responsible in controlling the blood volume and as well as blood pressure by reducing the concentration of sodium in the blood. Another organ is kidney. You have studied about kidney in your excretory system. So students, just remember the JG cells, the juxtaglomerular cells. Okay. So they release a hormone called as erythropoietin. So erythropoietin is a protein hormone that triggers the formation of red blood cells. The production of red blood cells is called as erythropoiesis. So erythropoiesis is the process of production of red blood cells. Especially this is done in the bone marrow. So in the bone marrow, we have pro-erythroblast cells, the erythrocyte progenitor cells, isn't it? So by the influence of this erythropoietin, what happens? The production of red blood cells takes place in the bone marrow. So whenever there is a condition with low oxygen in the blood, so immediately these JG cells are stimulated to secrete erythropoietin. So erythropoietin is released in response to low oxygen levels. By this, what happens whenever there is a decreased oxygen concentration in the blood? So this erythropoietin is secreted, and it stimulates or it activates this process, erythropoiesis. So more and more red blood cells are produced and they are released into the blood. So especially here, the juxtaglomerular cells. The juxtaglomerular cells are the specially modified epithelial cells that are present in the wall of the afferent arteriole, isn't it? Afferent arteriole. So these cells play an important role in secreting this erythropoietin in response to low oxygen levels, which stimulates the process of erythropoiesis. Another one is gastrointestinal tract, which you have studied in the digestive system. Gastrointestinal tract, especially throughout the length of gastrointestinal tract, some epithelial cells are present. Okay, and these epithelial cells secrete some important peptide hormones. Especially there are 5 major peptide hormones which are secreted by these mucosal cells of stomach and as well as intestine, small intestine, and they are gastrin, secretin, cholecystokinin, which is abbreviated as CCK, enterokinase, and the last one is gastric inhibitory peptide. So these are the 5 major peptide hormones. They are peptide hormones. They are produced by the mucosal cells, the mucosal epithelium of stomach, especially this one gastric, and all the remaining 4 are secreted by the duodenal mucosal epithelium of the small intestine, especially the duodenal part. Okay, so these are the peptide hormones. Let us see. So this is the picture which shows the stomach, and this is actually liver. We have gallbladder here, and this is the pancreas, and this is the duodenum, the first part of small intestine. First part of small intestine. Now let us see one by one. What does the gastrin do? So gastrin acts on gastric glands. So gastrin is secreted by the epithelium of stomach, and this acts on gastric glands such that the hydrochloric acid HCl and pepsinogen are released by the gastric glands. So this is the function of gastrin. Coming to the secretin, secretin is the hormone that is released by the duodenal mucosum. It mainly acts on the exocrine part of pancreas. Exocrine part of the pancreas means that is acinous part, and stimulates this part to secrete pancreatic juice, especially the bicarbonate ions. The release of bicarbonate ions and the release of water into the pancreatic juice is under the influence of or under the effect of secretin. And by this, what happens? The acidic nature of the gastric juices is brought to alkaline nature. So to convert the acidic chyme into alkaline, so the release of secretin is very, very important for further process of digestion. So the secretin is released, acts on the pancreatic exocrine part, and helps in the release of water and as well as bicarbonate ions. And cholecystokinin, this is also called as pancreozymin. Okay, so this is also released by the duodenal mucosa of duodenum, small intestine. So this hormone acts on gallbladder, especially it is responsible in the contraction of gallbladder for the release of bile juice, and this is also responsible for the release of pancreatic juice from the pancreatic gland. So this acts on both gallbladder and as well as pancreatic gland, and further facilitates the release of bile juice and the release of pancreatic juice into the duodenum for the further process of digestion. So this is cholecystokinin. Another one is enterokinase. This is the enzyme that is also secreted from the duodenal mucosa, and especially this activates the trypsin, chymotrypsin. Chymotrypsin is in inactive state. So the chymotrypsin becomes activated by the action of enterokinase, and further this trypsin by autocatalysis completely converts the chymotrypsin into trypsin, and it take part in the process of protein digestion. So this enterokinase activates chymotrypsin into trypsin. And finally, we have GIP, gastric inhibitory peptide hormone. GIP stands for gastric inhibitory peptide hormone. So the name itself defines, inhibits. It inhibits the gastric secretions and as well as gastrointestinal motility. It decreases or it inhibits the gastric intestinal motility. So what happens generally in the gastric, in the stomach, more and more HCl is secreted and the food is thoroughly churned and it is thoroughly mixed with HCl and becomes more and more acidic natured, isn't it? So by the inhibition of gastric secretions, so the gastric acidity is decreased. So the acidic natured chyme is converted into alkaline natured. Okay, so this GIP inhibits the gastric secretions. The release of gastric acids is inhibited, is stopped by this hormone, and it also inhibits the gastrointestinal motility. The movement, motility is nothing but the movement of stomach and the movement of small intestine. So their movement is regulated or controlled by this GIP, and that facilitates the complete emptying of stomach. It inhibits the complete emptying of stomach at a time. So these are the hormones that are secreted by the GI tract, that is gastrointestinal tract. And students, for your information, many other non-endocrine tissues, not only heart, kidney, gastrointestinal tract, apart from these, there are many other non-endocrine tissues in our body that secretes hormones called growth factors. And these growth factors show their effect almost on all of our body cells and responsible for growth and development. So this is regarding non-endocrine tissues and non-endocrine glands. A very quick recap of today's session. So far we have discussed adrenal glands and their respective hormones, pancreas, and we have discussed glucagon, insulin, testis, androgens. A very important androgen is testosterone. Ovaries, a female gonadal glands. Two important hormones from ovaries, estrogen, progesterone, and non-endocrine glands such as heart, kidneys, and gastrointestinal tract. Students, in the next part, we will be discussing about the mechanism of hormonal action with hormonal disorders in detail. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, sir. It was very informative. Children, please make a special notes on this and write all the important points. If you are not able to follow the sir immediately, what you can do is revisit the channel again and again and make a notes out of it so that it will be useful not only for your intermediate exams but also for the competitive exams. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you, madam.